All right, good evening, everybody. By my clock, it is now 6 p.m., so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody, to the what's today, May 8th, regular Planning Commission meeting. We're going to start with our housekeeping items, so we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Commissioner Tolley, would you mind leading us, please? Thank you very much. Before we continue along, I'm going to do a quick reminder for those of you in the audience. First of all, thank you for joining us. It's always really exciting for us to have somebody to look at when we're in these meetings. If you're hoping to speak tonight on any of the items on the agenda, which I'm assuming that's the case if you're here to speak, there's some speaker cards over here to the side. Please grab one. You don't have to do it right now. If you decide to speak later on, just make sure you fill one out if you do speak, okay? And as you have them, you can bring them over to city staff and they'll put you in the queue for when we're on whatever item you want to speak on. With that, let's move on to item 2. Oh, no, we have to do a roll call. I forgot, I'm going too quickly. So would you help us with a roll call, please, Megan?
Thanks, Chair. So tonight we're going to be swearing in Commissioner Flores, and she is our first on roll call. So Commissioner Flores, can you please confirm that you're here?
Here.
Commissioner Houghton?
Here.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Here.
Commissioner Khan?
Here.
Commissioner Tolley?
Here.
Vice Chair Cooley?
Here.
Chair Munoz Morris?
Here. Thank you very much. And with that, I realized I should have probably gone to this first, but we'll go ahead and want to congratulate Commissioner Tolley on your reappointment for another 4 years. I know you stepped in to fill a vacancy, so this is technically your first appointment, but congratulations on that reappointment. And welcome aboard, Commissioner Cheryl Flores. We're happy to have you here. So I believe city staff will now administer the oath of office for both of you.
And I will just be administering it for the new commissioner. Last year, we collected Commissioner Tolley's oath of office. So, Ms. Flores, if you would meet me in the front, please. Okay, I'll give you this certificate, and this section is what you're going to repeat after me. If you could please raise your right hand. I, please state your name.
I, Cheryl Flores,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or
Without-
purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
I furthermore agree to abide
I furthermore agree to abide
by the rules, regulations, and laws
by the rules, regulations, and laws
of the City of San Luis Obispo.
of the City of San Luis Obispo.
Okay, thank you so much.
To sign.
Great. Congratulations, Commissioner Flores, and welcome aboard. As you make your way over to the seat, as is customary, we like to invite you to say a few things about yourself and introduce yourself. And yeah, the floor is yours.
My name is Cheryl Flores, and I came to San Luis Obispo many years ago to go to Cal Poly, like probably many of you may have. I left for a few years and came back in the 80s. I've been employed in banking with the Farm Credit System and a local bank, which is here no more, for the first decade of my employment or so. And I've been with People Self-Help Housing for many years since then. And I'm very happy to join you tonight. I've been very involved in the community and a variety of things, and I've served on various boards in the region, in the industry, and national industry boards too. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And now, Commissioners, I have a request to make of you, which would be followed by a request to staff. But as you see on our agenda tonight, item 3 is the election of the chair and vice chair. However, given the fact that we have an item of great interest on our calendar today, and I had the benefit as current chair to have the discussions with city staff to prepare for this item, I'd like to request, if it's all right with you, that we move the election of chair to after item 5, so that we're able to do that. We can consider it my last kind of final grasp at the power of the gavel before I reluctantly give it up later on. Would that be all right with you all? Great, thank you very much. In that case, we'll table item 3 for after item 5. We'll move on to item 4, which is public comment for any items that are not on tonight's agenda. So this is the public's opportunity to speak to the commission on anything you'd like, other than what the items that are scheduled for tonight's agenda. We will get to those later. You'll have a chance to speak on those as well. But is there anybody that wishes to speak on any item that is not on the agenda tonight? You can either raise your hand or start sprinting forward. And seeing none, and assuming that the gentleman over here is probably going to speak on our upcoming item, we'll go ahead and close public comment, item 4, and we'll move on to our consent calendar. Once again, Commissioners, as previously stated, I had some conversations with staff as far as the nature of tonight's meeting, and given the high interest on item 5B, staff, I believe, has sent out a notice and recommended, and I agree with the recommendation, to pull item 5B out of the consent calendar so that we can discuss it later on. In that case, we would be on to item 5A only. Any objections to pulling item 5B from the consent calendar? All right, seeing, do we need a motion to bring the item out of consent? And a second?
So moved.
Okay, I guess we have a motion.
And I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Great, we'll pull item 5B. Let's go ahead and then consider our consent calendar, which is now just item 5A, which is the consideration of the minutes for the March 13th Planning Commission meeting. Do we have a motion on item 5A?
Move to approve item 5A, the minutes.
No? Motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, second. Any discussion? Nope. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great.
For the record, I'm abstaining since I wasn't part of the commission.
Yeah, sounds good. That's your choice. It's okay for you to vote on it, even though you weren't there, because you had the chance to review the minutes, but you're welcome to abstain if you like. Just letting you know. Okay.
Thank you.
I believe with that, we come to item 5B. And I believe city staff has prepared a brief presentation for us tonight to kind of frame the conversation. That'd be right? Great.
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. And just before we get started, Commissioner Flores does have a conflict with this item, so I'm going to go ahead and let her state for the record the reason for that conflict, and then give her an opportunity to leave the dais.
Yes, of
We'll
course.
invite her back as soon as we're done with this item.
Of course, thank you.
Yes, I'm going to recuse myself because I own property within 500 feet of the item. Thank you.
And Chair, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I don't believe I have a conflict, but in the interest of transparency, I did want to disclose that I am a county employee. I work for the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, and I have no decision-making authority over this item, and it would have no impact on me personally, financially, were it to be approved or denied. I do believe I can be impartial, so I do intend to take part in this discussion and decision.
Great. Thank you for that disclosure. Yes, Commissioner.
And just to echo Commissioner Cooley's, also a county employee. I'm a planner at the Planning and Building Department. I have no participation in this project.
Great, thank you for that. Anyone else? Great. In that case, we'll hand it over to city staff for a presentation on item 5B.
Thank you, Chair Muniz-Morris. Just one moment while we get our screen situated here.
Yeah, of course, take your time.
Thank you. Thank you again, Chair Muniz-Morris, and thank you, commissioners. I am Teresa McClish, the Housing Policy and Programs Manager, and I'll be giving the staff report this evening or some additional information for the consent item. And I'm joined here this evening by Daisy Weiberg, who's the homelessness response manager for the city of San Luis Obispo. Thank you for pulling the item. This item has generated a lot of public interest and comment, and so we're happy to be able to have the opportunity to share some general information about the county's project. And I'd also like to note briefly that we do have some county staff in the audience as well. So the staff recommendation tonight is for you to adopt the resolution included as attachment A in your packet, and this is a determination that the proposed San Luis Obispo County's action on the subject property to authorize and/or construct public buildings or structures for the purposes of developing interim and supportive housing conforms to the city's general plan. Staff has had an opportunity to review many comments from the public that have come in regarding this determination, and our recommendation remains unchanged based on the findings that the property may be found in conformance. Staff understands that the placement of the item on the consent agenda. Yes,
Yeah.
certainly.
But yeah, maybe, keep it a little closer. And I know these things are a little sensitive. Yeah, there we go. Maybe that'll help.
Okay, how's that? Hopefully much better. Staff understands that the placement of this item on the consent agenda and the narrow purview of commissioners' authority may be frustrating to community members who would like to discuss the merits of the project. The city has partnered with the county to secure grant funding in alignment with both the city's homelessness response strategic plan as well as the countywide plan to address homelessness. As a landowner and grant recipient is the county. The county has a sole permitting authority for the project. The city's role is to provide the commission with an opportunity to find the use of property by a public agency in conformance with the city's general plan. This is a procedural step for projects on public land per state law. Specifically, California Government Code Section 65402 requires a local planning agency to make a findings of general plan conformance whenever a governmental entity proposes to acquire property, dispose of property, or construct or authorize a public building or structure within the limits of the city that has an adopted general plan. And this code section requires the location, purpose, and extent of such county building or structure be submitted to and reported upon by the planning agency having jurisdiction. So we're happy to go through some information and description of the Welcome Home Village project. It is a program that will enable the city and the county of San Luis Obispo to work collaboratively to address encampments along the Bob Jones Trail corridor. And it is enabled through an awarded grant to the San Luis Obispo County for $13.4 million. And this is a program, state program to resolve encampment areas and to build projects such as this to rapidly rehouse homeless individuals is considered to be based on a widely successful model to reduce the burden that homelessness places on neighborhoods, businesses, and those experiencing it. The proposed project site will be located on the County Health Campus off of Bishop Street and Johnson Avenue. The Welcome Home Village it will include 34 interim supportive housing units and 46 permanent supportive housing units, with the intention of providing housing and supportive services for individuals transitioning out of homelessness. The Welcome Home Village is a self-contained housing community with individuals being pre-screened by the service provider, Good Samaritan Shelter, to be eligible for housing and services. The site will include 24-hour security with video surveillance monitoring, and individuals with registered sex offender status will not be permitted into the program. Oops. Further, project level review, again, emphasize the project level review will be discussed at the Board of Supervisors hearing scheduled for May 21st in a couple weeks. The Encampment Resolution Fund grant timeline requires that the project move quickly, as the program is intended to resolve priority encampment areas and rapidly rehouse individuals experiencing homelessness. Significant project expenditures must occur before the end of June 2024 to meet state grant requirements. The general plan land use for the Welcome Home Village site is public and identifies homeless shelters, similar services, and social services as appropriate in the public land use designation. Additionally, the city's sixth cycle housing element supports homeless services and transitional housing opportunities through the following goals. Goal 1, for safety, includes Program 1.7, which highlights continued support by local and regional solutions to homelessness by funding supportive programs, services, and housing solutions. And Goal 8, for special housing needs. This includes policies and programs that encourage housing development that meets a variety of special needs, including assisting the homelessness by supporting shelters, transitional housing, and supporting jointly with other agencies programs such as Housing First and Rapid Rehousing for the Homeless. Additional supporting policies and programs are outlined in the staff report. Public comment received included lots of questions about several policies in the general plan that were not identified in the staff report. Staff identified the primary policies most applicable to the project. Generally, given that land use plans reflect a range of competing interests, a project could be compatible with the plan's overall goals and objectives, but need not be in perfect conformity with every general plan policy. And given that the land use, I was going to repeat myself and I won't. Thank you. Land use element also discusses, this is regarding land use element, the land use element and consideration of neighborhood compatibility, and this is addressing many of the comments from the public. The land uses immediately surrounding the Welcome Home Village are county facilities and medical offices, including behavioral health, probation department, the crisis stabilization unit. The land use of the Welcome Home Village is considered compatible with these surrounding uses and not considered to alter the character of nearby residential neighborhoods. The Planning Commission made similar general plan conformity findings for another permanent supportive housing development in the project's vicinity in 2017, and this was the Bishop Street Studios project. finding it consistent with the general plan, inclusive of its location adjacent to residential properties. Although the county has self-permitting authority for the project and is exempt under state law for compliance with city zoning or building regulations, the project would be a combined allowed use and minor use permit project per the city's zoning code, and so would be permitted if the city had development review authority over this project. Rezoning is not required, it's not requested, and no project rezoning action is before the Planning Commission. It should be stated that the city's zoning code implements its general plan and housing policies, programs, and goals, and aligns with the state housing and shelter crisis laws. The city zoning code allows supportive and transitional housing projects and facilities in nearly every zoning district, including the public facility and residential districts in which the Welcome Home Village site is located, and this further supports the general plan conformity finding for the project. To conclude, staff appreciates community concerns and the challenges involved with addressing homelessness. The city has reviewed and considered community comments received and has found no facts supporting a change in its staff recommendation that the project is in conformance with the general plan and recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the draft resolution. The city, in partnership with the county, will work collaboratively to address concerns raised by community members as the projects move forward. All comments that were received by the Planning Commission will be forwarded to the county. And we would like to note that Linda Belt, the county's Deputy Director of Adult and Homeless Services, in its attendance tonight and can offer additional information on the project. Again, the narrow purview of the commission has been outlined, but we're happy to answer questions regarding the conformance with the general plan. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that presentation. Quite informative. Commissioners, do we have any questions specific to staff or to staff's presentation?
I'm going to hold off on questions until after public comment.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Howard?
So the $13.4 million, you said that there's an end of June deadline for significant expenditures. Can you say a little more exactly what that might mean?
I could have a stab at it, but I'd really prefer that to be answered by Linda Belt. She's the project manager for the project, but it's, it's about half of the grant funds need to be spent by the end of June, sizable amount.
That seems like a lot to spend in the next 7 weeks. Okay.
Any other? Okay. I may have a couple of questions. So I want to make sure that I'm very clear on our purview tonight. So from your presentation, what I gather is we're not here to discuss the merits of this project, the design of this project, the feasibility of this project. We're merely here to decide whether or not we can make the finding that this project's use or intended use conforms with the zoning that our city has for this site. Is that correct, roughly?
Near correct. I just like one correction.
Yes.
And the purview of the Planning Commission is centered on finding conformity with the city's general plan.
The general
You
plan.
do not need to make any findings regarding the city's zoning.
Thank you for that
or
correction.
regulation, and that's because the county will be self-permitting on this project.
So we're essentially, we're only here to say whether or not it conforms with our general plan.
That's correct.
Right. Now, you also said a couple of things that I wanted to note. One of them was the state requires the city, I guess, because it's within our city limits, to make this finding as part of the process. Is that correct? So we have a requirement to make this finding? Or there is a requirement in some capacity?
You have a requirement. I'm going to refer this to Chelsea. I just blanked on your last name. Oh, sorry.
Chelsea O'Sullivan. I am stepping in for the city attorney's office. I'm with Richards, Watson, and Gershon. I've filled in a couple times, but yes, I can happily address that question. Under Government Code Section 65402, when a well, there's lots of qualifications, but if a county can't construct a building or structure within the corporate limits of a city, so County of San Luis Obispo can't construct this project within the corporate limits of the city of San Luis Obispo until the location, purpose, and event of such project has been reported to or submitted to and reported upon by the Planning Commission's agency as to the conformity.
I see.
That's where the requirement comes. And again, it's only that you have to report on the conformity of the project with the general plan.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Yes, no. So, yeah, and then lastly, what I heard is that the county, as the owner of this land, has sole permitting rights for that site, correct?
That's correct. They'll self-permit, and so they're not subject to the city zoning or building regulations.
Right, okay. So then, say we have a discussion in a few minutes here, after we, actually in several minutes after we hear the community out, and we decide that we cannot make this finding. What are the consequences? Are there any consequences to the city? I mean, I understand the consequences perhaps to the project, but are there any ramifications, I guess, of us not making this finding? Oh,
I can help address that as well. So again, as I just mentioned, the requirement is just to report on the conformity. There's no requirement that for the project to go forward that you find consistency. So this is a little different than a project that you would be approving as the Planning Commission, and it needs to meet the general plan, be consistent with the general plan. You just have to say which way it goes, and then if whatever your determination is, that's the end of the city's purview. I will say the resolution that staff has prepared in the agenda assumes that you all will find conformancy. So if you
of course,
are
yeah, I understand that.
unable to do that, we would work on, to maybe take a recess and work on a resolution of other findings.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, we'd want to make those be specific.
Yeah, I'm not trying to anticipate, I'm just trying to understand exactly, from a very layman's perspective, because I don't have any as much technical knowledge perhaps as those of you that are more heavily involved in. By the way, what a day to step in, huh? Okay,
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I was very clear, and I think I see some fingers, so do you have some questions?
I just wanted to confirm something that I think I heard, and maybe Ms. Belch can speak to this, but our understanding is that May 21st is a County Board of Supervisors meeting, and that is an opportunity for the public to address more substantive issues about this project. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for asking that question. May 21st at the Board of Supervisors hearing, they'll hear several actions on the Welcome Home Village project, and it's the appropriate time to talk about the project itself in terms of its design and different considerations.
And I just wanted to add that me asking that question, I did read every letter we received, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say tonight, but I just also wanted to point out that there are additional opportunities to substantively comment on this project.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, yes, Commissioner Tola.
This question might be more for the city attorney. So regardless of our just to make sure, regardless of our determination whether or not this conforms with the general plan, it's still going to go forward to the Board of Supervisors, but that determination that we make here tonight will follow this project and be presented to the Board of Supervisors. Is that correct?
Yes, your determination will be reported to the Board of Supervisors, but it doesn't affect their ability to approve or deny or condition the project based on their own self-permitting requirements.
Understood.
Okay. Thank you for those two comments, which I think are a great segue into a public comment. One last, I guess, thing to make sure that I want to confirm is that any communications that the city has received so far and whatever notes are coming out of this meeting will be also forwarded to the supervisor so they can review. Is that correct?
We'll provide all the comments that we've received to the county and the record of the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. I know it takes time and effort for people to write in, so I just want to recognize that and make sure that we can get it along to to the real decision makers, I guess. With that, and. One more. Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't see you.
So I want to circle back to the zoning question. The staff report does mention the zoning, R1 and PF zones, and the allowable uses in there, but a minute ago you said we are not here to pass any kind of judgment on that. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, the decision of the Planning Commission solely concerns the general plan. I did mention the zoning because it's just further supporting, in staff's view, the findings for general plan conformity.
Okay, thanks.
All right, well, with that, I think we should now offer the community a chance to speak. I understand that tonight's meeting is not perhaps the time and the setting that you were hoping for, and we're not going to be able to make the decisions that maybe you're hoping for, but you do nonetheless have the chance to still speak and share your thoughts. So I imagine we have a number of speaker cards, Megan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Tonight we had you make a decision if you would rather speak for 1 minute, 2 minutes, or 3 minutes, and the people with the least amount of time get to go first. So I'm going to go ahead and rattle off our 1 minute speakers, and then we'll move on to 2 minutes. So we have Natalie Tartaglia, Steve Barish, and Christopher Schneider.
Good evening. I'm Natalie Tartaglia. My house is the closest house to this project, about 100 feet away. It's my understanding that you have not received a project proposal or development plan tonight from the county. I might not be understanding this correctly. However, I don't understand how general plan conformity can be assessed without some written development plan or other written evidence guaranteeing that the county's project will provide only interim and/or supportive housing. In other words, written evidence that the housing stays will be limited to a certain number of days interim, or that management of the housing will be a requirement supportive. While general plan conformity may be a procedural step, it is an important one. If the proposed project is found to be inconsistent with the general plan, it triggers more intensive CEQA review. That's my understanding. It is my understanding that even if the county will be self-permitting this project, it still must be in conformance with the general plan unless an amendment to the general plan is first approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Barish?
Thank you, Megan. Good evening. I've only found out about this project about a week ago. There was not a lot of public outreach in our neighborhood along Flora or Sydney at all. I was not allowed to speak at the first public meeting. They wouldn't recognize me. I assume this group is an advisory body to the City Council on land use, zoning, environmental conformance, and broad guidelines. I sat in your chair for 8 years in another city. I'm very aware of what your responsibilities are. I'm having a hard time grappling with the fairly strict guidelines of the R1 zoning area around this site, particularly to the south. I've built homes there, I live there, I recreate there, and I can't understand how the strict guidelines of setbacks, parking requirements, landscape guidelines, aesthetics work with this kind of project in this location. My understanding is that there was a couple of false starts in other similar locations that didn't fly. I'm still puzzled by how you're gonna bus people from the creek over to the Johnson and Flora area myself. They have to be pretty explosion-proof buses. And I'm also concerned about the fire issue. This is a dead-end street on Flora. I was involved with the former county administrator of the general hospital in the master planning of the balance of this site at one time. And I'm very aware of the soil conditions and the drainage problems on this site. There's a lot of clay in the soil, and there's a lot of underlying soil strata that makes development here a little bit tricky.
I do apologize for
yeah.
interrupting you, Mr. Barish, but your time is up.
I didn't specify any time, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I have a speaker card just saying that you selected the 1 minute time, so that's what I
Okay,
said
can
the
I
time
just say
was.
goodbye? Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Sorry to cut you off.
Apologies for that
Christopher Schneider.
confusion, yeah.
Hello, I'm Christopher Schneider. I live in San Luis Obispo, about a half mile from the proposed site. There are a few things I find troubling with the proposal. The close proximity to educational facilities, Sinsheimer, the adult school, San Luis Obispo High School. And as mentioned before, the close proximity to a high fire risk area that certainly the installation or the residency of what I believe to be a high-risk population. Collectively, I think those risks somehow, to use your term from the commission member, in layman's terms, must collectively in some way violate the general plan of the city. So I'd ask the commission to consider all of those aspects. Thank you for your consideration. Yeah.
All right, the next speakers will get 2 minutes, and that's Dan O'Hare, Jessica Goswick, and then Kemi Nguyen.
Good evening. My name's Dan O'Hare. I live within approximately 100 feet of the project. It's my understanding that the two lots are zoned R1 and PF. I'm not familiar with the PF zoning. I am familiar with R1. I don't understand how an R1 lot can contain 44 or 36 additional housing units. It doesn't seem feasible. I don't see how that can possibly fall into the general plan. In addition, it would seem to me that CEQA analysis comes into play here and that there should be an environmental impact report as part of the CEQA analysis. At a minimum, and it seems to me that the driving force here is the timing. To spend millions of dollars by the end of June is driving this process. Our community has not been allowed to participate in the process at all. And well, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Jessica Goswick, and then Kemi Nguyen.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your time and your dedication to this community. My name is Jessica Goswick. I'm a resident of San Luis Obispo who currently lives adjacent to a housing development for the formerly homeless in the High Street neighborhood. I am here today to give my wholehearted support for the Welcome Home Village at the corner of Bishop and Johnson. In my experience living in a single-family house adjacent to homes for the formerly homeless, I have had only positive experiences with the residents. I have even formed great friendships with many of them. Their presence has been an asset and not a burden. In looking at the Dignity Moves projects that they've done in other locations, I believe that this project at Bishop and Johnson could do the same for this neighborhood. To speak to the general plan, it is clear from the staff's presentation and thorough report that this project conforms with the general plan. Furthermore, I believe that your support of this project would go a long way in helping to house those in our community, not only through this project, but also in your support of the larger pro-housing legacy that the city hopes to maintain. I urge you to use your voice today to vote for more housing in a city where we desperately need it, and confirm that this project conforms with the general plan. Thank you.
Okay, and then Kemi Nguyen.
Good evening, Commissioners. I am a resident of SLO. My name is Kemi Nguyen. I'm not currently a resident in this neighborhood, but I used to live right down the street on Johnson Avenue. It was the first apartment I ever lived in with my partner, and it was during COVID. So we have a lot of like weird, wonderful memories of this particular area. It's very special to us. I would like to voice my support for this project. I would still support it if I lived here. I'm tired of seeing people living in the creek, and I want these people to have somewhere to go at the end of the day. Regarding the conformity issue, I'm an urban planner. I've spent my entire academic and professional life looking at zoning codes, looking at general plans, and I know that you all know that single-family zoning, density limits, setbacks, all these things were originally created at a time for situations just like this, to protect nice neighborhoods, to keep undesirable people out. In the 50s and 60s, that was Black and brown people. It was people who looked like me. And today, it's people who are pushing around their shopping carts, everything they own, because they can't afford to rent a home here. So what are we hearing today? Don't put them near my house, put them by the industrial area, put them by the freeway. It's too dense. Do more environmental studies. The list of issues go on, but to me it's very clear the end goal is exactly the same. I feel very strongly that the zoning and general plan do serve a strong purpose. The purpose is not to be weaponized against people who need a place to live. So I encourage you, please do not perpetuate this type of thinking when you have the chance to do something different here. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move on to the 3-minute speakers, starting with Sylvia Drucker, and then Linda Belch, and Cindy Blum.
Thank you very much. I take exception to the last comments. I'm not trying to keep people out because of their economic level or anything like that. I'm sure she meant well. The general plan to me should be indicative of the fact that we want this community to be protective of its citizens regardless of where they live, that anytime I leave my home, I should be able to feel comfortable. I shouldn't have to worry about fire hazards, flooding, and the two things that happen in that area quite consistently. We've had to evacuate a number of times. You know, we had a terrible fire there at one point. Traffic on Johnson Avenue is untenable. I can't imagine if we have another fire, which we probably will, that we will be able to accommodate 80 more, 70 more, 100 more people. Last fire, we could barely get on the street as it was. And the fact that the county already has services there, I sort of feel that we opened the barn door happily. Do probation department, have the transition housing. The property was there. We'd love to cooperate as a neighborhood, but we opened the door. So now that we have supported all of these services, I feel as though the county is saying, okay, the door's open, let's just jump right in there with a whole lot of other things. I don't think that's good for our city. I think there are better places where the people living in those houses that I've seen pictures of could have a better environment for themselves, rather than having that parcel of land. Where are they going to go? On the street? There's no park there for them. There are places in this city that have better accommodation for anyone, let alone people who are used to living outdoors as it is. Give them some grass, give them area. This parcel is not in the best interest of the health and welfare of anyone in the city. And I think that's what the general plan is. I was thinking, because of the timeline, we have been rushing through this process. When I was working at one point, we used to say, poor planning on your part doesn't necessitate an emergency on my part. And I have a feeling that that's what's happening right now. I hope you have ample time to really consider all of the aspects of the general plan, all of the aspects of R1 zoning, without rushing to judgment because the county needs to spend a lot of money and have not done a good job at all of indicating to the public what exactly it is that they're doing. We've not been involved in the planning. I take exception to that. But I thank you very much for your time and you listening to this. I had pages, but I couldn't even do that. So thanks.
Thank you. Linda Belch.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Linda Belch, and I am Deputy Director for Adult and Homeless Services and a member of the project team working on the Welcome Home Village project. On behalf of the team, I want to thank all of you and those who've come out tonight as well to participate in this process and to provide input into what's a very important project. The Welcome Home Village project will be a non-congregate supportive housing community. That means everyone living there has their own private space. Think tiny homes or cabins, each with individualized and required case management. The site will include 34 interim beds for those who are transitioning from living in unsheltered environments and 46 permanent supportive beds for people who need longer-term support and care. Some examples of permanent supportive housing have been lifted up tonight, including the Bishop Street Studios, which are nearby the project. Funded by a $13.4 million grant, this project is being developed by Dignity Moves, a nonprofit organization with extensive experience developing small communities to address homelessness statewide, and also will be managed by Good Samaritan, a provider with over 35 years' experience who manages multiple similar projects in our neighboring Santa Barbara County. One key area I want to stress is that this project is not a new, unproven concept. Rather, this project is being built upon the expertise and experience of providers who have worked on similar projects in other jurisdictions with proven results. Results that include complete resolution of targeted encampments, and in the Santa Barbara project, they've served 125 people who on average were unhoused for 7 years prior to coming to their location, and to date, 68 of those individuals have moved on to permanent housing. While I've mentioned our providers for the Welcome Home Project's work in our neighboring county, I also want to stress this exact concept is working right here in San Luis Obispo. 5 Cities Homeless Coalition's Cabins for Change have been open for almost 2 years and recently expanded to 50 units with an impressive 68% success rate. Despite their expansion, 5 Cities Cabins Project has a wait list of nearly 300 individuals. We all know this project is needed, and we all have compassion and want to see real solutions such as the Welcome Home Village to be created to address the needs of individuals who are experiencing homelessness. However, I also want to address and acknowledge that new programs coming to communities can cause some concern. One key difference with this type of housing community and other programs is there are no walk-up services available. It's a voluntary program with strict participation criteria. Good Samaritan focuses on providing everything residents need on site, including laundry, cooking facilities, training, and recreation activities. The project will be securely fenced with on-site security, cameras situated throughout, and residents have to abide by a strict curfew. I appreciate your support, and I am available should you have any further questions.
Actually, I might have a quick question for you, if you don't mind, just very briefly. For the interim housing, what's the average length of stay? Do you have any data on that, or?
90 days.
90 days?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have Cindy Blum, followed by Stefan Talley, and then Homan Kian.
Hello. I'm going to speak specifically about compliance with the general plan. And I'm going to start with the land use element section of the document, conservation and development of residential neighborhoods with the policies. 2.1, neighborhood focus. The city shall preserve, protect, and enhance the city's neighborhoods and strive to preserve and enhance their identity and promote a higher quality of life within each neighborhood. Second, 2.2.3, neighborhood traffic. Neighborhoods should be protected from intrusive traffic. Well, over 100 spaces, parking spaces, will be removed from the site where people currently park, and that will be spilled over into the neighborhood. This project will not protect us from intrusive traffic. 2.2.6, neighborhood characteristics. The city shall promote quiet enjoyment and safety for all residents. Well, noise and safety issues are definitely something we are concerned about, and I do not believe this project will promote lively, quiet enjoyment and safety for all residents. Again, from the general plan land use element, 2.4E-F, the city should involve residents early in reviewing proposed public and private projects and that could have neighborhood impacts by notifying residents and property owners and holding meetings at convenient times and places within the neighborhoods. The city has not involved residents, nor the county, impacted by the project early in the process. It has not notified us, and it has not held meetings within our neighborhood. Neither has the county. So these are the general, this is from the general plan. These are the policies that are in place that I don't believe this project enhances our neighborhoods and quality of life. So in summary, I believe, I've been thinking about this a lot, the root of what's happening here is who has responsibility and who has authority with respect to the development portion of this project and funding. It's clear to me in reading the general plan that the city has the responsibility to inform us, to include us, and to protect us, but it has no authority. The county, on the other hand, appears to have all the authority and no responsibility. So it's a little bit of a dilemma. I urge you all, please, to pause this process any way you can. Planning Commission, the city, pause it to allow more time for vetting, for input, and to make it more conformance with the general plan. Thank you so much for your time.
Just as far as conduct goes, if you could show your support for somebody using the ASL form of representation, that would be great. So the next person is Stefan Talley, and then Homan Kian.
Yes, hello. Thank you, commissioners. And a lot of what I was thinking of saying has already been said. So I'm just going to talk about or ask a couple questions about the self-permitting. First of all, how can I do that? That would be great, right? I just write myself a permit and I can just do something. But seriously, I think that is a problematic because that means, just like the previous speaker said, that there's no jurisdiction, that county can do whatever they want. That seems amazing to me. That doesn't seem really democratic. But so I actually looked into the self-permitting, and I'm not a lawyer, but it does seem that there's case law from the 1980s, the 1990s, but there is an exception, and I'm wondering whether that has been considered and whether you know anything about it and whether any documentation about that has been submitted. And again, that's just based off an article, but there was a 2018 case. I can give you the case number. And basically it says that if, and this was a case where a city owned some property in county land, and as long as the city was using it in a way that was consistent with their public purpose, they were allowed to be immune from permitting from the county. So the other way around presumably also works. So I'm wondering, is this project consistent with the public purpose of the county, and has there been any documentation given to this board here today to that, just basically to justify that? So I'll just hold my comments from there. Thank you.
Okay. Homan Kian, followed by Deborah Clear and Yuo Bond.
Hi, everyone. My name is Homan Kian. This project really bothers me. I've never been in this kind of setting, so excuse me. I'm not familiar with the way you guys carry on. But my property is about 100 feet away from this project. It borders the fence of the Bishop's Medical Plaza. I can see over. I've had stragglers sleeping next to our fence in the past, and we've lived there for about 13 years. And this project really bothers me. I really would like to raise this strong objection to it. I took my kids down to Los Angeles last year. I took them down to the homeless shelter down in Los Angeles, the Mission Homeless Shelter. And I remember what it was like there. The homeless shelter itself was nice, but outside was full of filth. People had tents everywhere. People were sleeping on the streets, peeing, and had urine and feces everywhere. People were yelling in the streets. This is the kind of environment we're introducing potentially in that area. This is an area which is in the middle of two schools, Senheimer School and a high school. You've got a senior living facility just above it. And you've got so many single-family homes everywhere. You've got people who've lived there for decades. I know of people who've built their houses from ground up. They've had their kids, they raised their kids there, their kids have grown up and gone away, and they're hoping to live their lives in that place. But with this project, you could potentially be taking their lives away. Crime would go up. Potentially drug problems would arise from this kind of thing. It could affect our kids. I have a son who's going to be going to that high school. He's going to be passing by that area. And I don't want to see him pass through all that filth, potentially be exposed to that kind of environment, the drugs. It's not about being unsympathetic to the homeless. I do care about them, but this is just an inappropriate place to put this. There are a lot of other places that you can consider. This is just an inappropriate place. Please consider some other place. Thank you.
All right, and Deborah Clear?
Thank you very much. I'm Deborah Clear. I am also a member of this neighborhood. And I want to say that I take exception to this lot being described as part of a health campus. I'm not even really sure what that means, but let me assure you what it looks like because I walk past it all the time. What this is Johnson and Bishop. They're two thoroughfares. They are streets operated in the city of San Luis Obispo. Across the street from the lot are homes, single-family homes across Johnson. Across the street from Bishop, which if you look at a bird's eye view of the project, it's easy to see it as part of the county. It's not. It's a parking lot with a street in between it and the old county hospital. On the other side of that parking lot, it's privately owned medical offices, right? An HOA of privately owned medical offices. Surrounding this property on three sides are homes. And let me tell you, it's not a medical campus, it's a neighborhood. And what that looks like is that if you go up the street from Johnson and Bishop and you head towards the probation department, which I don't understand why probation is characterized as a health campus, or the Family Resource Center, or Transitions Mental Health, or the parking garage, or California Children's Services. And if these people need to access the medical crisis unit, then I am really worried about who's going to be in that facility. But if you go up that street past Bishop, what you see is a little tiny fire lane, and you have to look on the map to see it. And it allows access from the entire Flora Street, South Flora Street neighborhood through that area, down Bishop, to Jennifer Street Bridge, to the Terrace Hill, to, as one previous person said, Sinsheimer Elementary, Sinsheimer Park. It allows traffic and people and bicycles to stay off the very busy Johnson Avenue. So if you've been on Johnson Avenue lately, you'll know what we're talking about. We believe maintaining that pathway through that neighborhood is a really important part of maintaining the character of our neighborhood. And, you know, I also do take exception with people assuming that this is a NIMBY kind of thing. It's easy for people to step back and say that. And I know I would probably think that too. But there are some very good reasons for us to be concerned about safety. Just because the county can do this project, it doesn't mean they should. And you're here for that reason. You are here to protect the city of San Luis Obispo for that reason. I've heard people say they won't ride bikes on the Bob Jones Trail anymore. Well, I wouldn't either. And that's because it's dangerous. So please, putting 80 people on a parking lot end to end in a single family home neighborhood, that makes no sense to me. I don't know how you can find that in compliance with the general plan. So we'd ask you to at least ask for a continuance on this issue, if nothing else, and our preference would be that you would say no. Thank you. May I also ask people in the audience who are opposed to the project to raise their hands? We won't waste your time having every one of these people speak, but let me assure you, we've all read everything we can get our hands on in the very short period of time that we've had to look at this issue, and there's some very real questions about its viability. Let me also tell you, with all respect to Linda, this project isn't at all like the other projects that they've done. None of them's been in a residential area. None of them's been 80 beds. So we have no metrics on how that impacts a neighborhood at all. So without those questions being answered, we can't really feel very good about this project going forward. Thank you.
The next speaker is Yo Bond, followed by Alyssa, and then the last speaker card I have is Grant Robbins.
My name is Joe Bowd. I reside at 1645 Corona Court and have been there for 36 years. I developed the subdivision. Juana's my neighbor, the McLeans are my other neighbors. We're aware of the Planning Commission item tonight is simply to find consistency with the general plan. So all of the other discussion in the staff report with obscure land use and general plan policies really are irrelevant. Regardless of the target audience, the tenants, the impacts of a high-density residential development are all the same. The report analyses discussing the city zoning ordinance, compliance, county land use policies, and other mutual strategies really don't have an effect with your decision this evening. What does, though, the relevant one is a high-density, multiple-family residential project proposed in a general plan designation of public and appropriate land use in a single-family residential area. I submit that it is not. And I rewrote your resolution. And without going through the whereases, I'll get right to the findings. The proposed project cannot be found consistent with the general plan designation of public without receipt of a comprehensive plan package and project description that includes a complete and detailed environmental analysis in accordance with SECR requirements in order to evaluate potential impacts to the general health, safety, and welfare of people living and working in the vicinity. And I take offense to the comments in the staff report that said that this is consistent and not impacting the general health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood. Number two, the Planning Commission cannot determine that this proposal satisfies the intent of the city's general plan, housing element, or homelessly response strategy plan without a comprehensive development description, financing schedule, detailed long-term management plan, operational and implementation plan, including appropriate bonding, insurance guarantees, and developer statement as financial capability. And number three, environmental review. No California Environmental Quality Act analysis has occurred, has not been prepared or submitted, and no public comment or peer review on such analysis has been conducted. Therefore, the abundance of caution rule and responsible pragmatic decision-making rule dictates that such an analysis be completed and certified prior to any action that this commission may take this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. Yeah, thank you. It would be great if you could show your support or your disapproval using the hands or the thumbs. Yes, no clapping. And Chair, I just wanted to make you aware, I've received 2 speaker cards now after the fact, so just wanted to make you aware of that. It's kind of your call if you want to continue to allow attendees to submit those cards or if we want to put a hard stop.
No, I think it's fine. We should allow it, yes.
So just a reminder to the audience, if you want to speak, it's really helpful if you can fill those out and get them to me as we're calling the names or even ahead of time. Just keeps us organized. So without ado, Alyssa.
Thank you. I can't quite believe I'm doing this. I've never done anything like this, so bear with me.
Can I ask you to please hold this a little? Yeah, so that they can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm writing everything down, and I'm going to speak fast. Okay, tonight I wish to address a couple of the issues directly related to the city's general plan and where this project clearly does not comply or conform. I'm just going to reply to policy numbers rather than read the entire lengthy name. Policy 7.1, this housing project will not preserve, protect, or enhance the neighborhood, nor does it respect the neighborhood character. Just the opposite. In fact, as the portable nature of this project presents the likelihood of environmental impact on the surrounding neighborhoods in the form of sanitation, sound, and lighting impacts. Policy 2.14 EF, residents were not involved early in the reviewing proposed project. Many residents only learned about this project through a neighbor who was approached by KSBY, similar to another instance when the city attempted to make a Palm Street neighborhood a safe parking site and subsequently faced similar public outcry. This project has a looming deadline of next month. If residents were just notified the last week of April, there is no arguing this point. The county did not abide by policy 2.14 EF. In fact, the project has not been presented as proposed, but rather a done deal, making residents feel that they can do nothing to stop it. Supervisor Paulding announced the May 21st Board of Supervisors meeting where they plan to vote on it as the time residents can voice their concerns. They did not, however, announce at the informational meeting on May 1st that there was this Planning Commission meeting. This is because they're actually doing the opposite of what this policy states they need to do. They are trying not to get resident feedback. Policy 5.15. The city has a responsibility to promote county, state, and federal services in the South Higuera Prado Road vicinity. The Johnson Bishop neighborhood, which includes 3 preschools 1 block or less from the site, an elementary school, nearby high school, and heavily traveled by minors. The proposed Johnson site is not near the encampment the BOS wishes to eliminate and is not near many of the other services that the population will need to regularly access. Policies 5.1.7, this project is not in keeping with the residential density of the neighborhood. Contrary to the similar sites that were mentioned, they're smaller. The density of the 80-bed facility is not, quote, considerate of the maximum residential density allowed in neighboring zones, as it is much larger than anything in this neighborhood. I want to just lay the last part. I have to cut on the parking, which is also insufficient and hasn't been resolved. These are just some of the policies with which the Board of Supervisors project does not comply. This should never have been on the agenda as a consent item. It is just another example of how the Board of Supervisors has worked to prevent open dialogue on a huge project, circumventing input from their own constituents and those most heavily impacted because of their rush to meet a deadline. Very likely the Planning Commission is under great pressure from the Board of Supervisors to approve this project that does not comply with at least 8 different policies in the city's general plan. Please do not let the Board of Supervisors rush your own careful consideration and responsibility to be fully informed about the problematic project they have hastily tried to push through the approval process. I ask that you please vote to postpone this action until there is more dialogue with community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. We'll have Grant Robbins, and then the last speaker card I have is Bob Townsend.
Good evening, members of this Planning Commission. I was not planning on speaking, but I just wanted to take a moment to highlight a couple things. First off, I'd like to make everyone aware that nobody here is trying to weaponize this issue. I think that's a misuse of that term that gets thrown around, and I don't think that's anybody's intent. And along those lines, I think it raises a very important issue here. Everyone really just wants the opportunity to have a conversation about this. A lot of projects that get built in our city that are controversial have charrettes at the library or at the Ludwig Center where people can come in and talk about it and learn. I think most of these people in our community went to the presentation by the developers and everybody in the county a week or so ago, and it looks great. I'll admit, it does look like a great program. But if you want people in your community to buy into a solution and to be part of a solution, you need to have engaging conversation with the people that it impacts in a way that allows them to have feedback and opportunities to maybe make a difference or understand things that aren't known. And I think the biggest complaint that everyone has here is that we're being shut off on time. This was a project that was designated originally for South Higuera. That was shut down because someone had to hire an attorney to make everyone understand that that did not work in that location. I think it's also along those lines, it's important to note, the city's general plan states that South Higuera is the area designated for services associated with homelessness. Solving those issues, providing those locations and those services in that location. That was not mentioned in the presentation because it didn't help this conversation. I think it would be interesting to look at all the things that are not compliant with the general plan versus the things that were mentioned that are compliant with the general plan. At what point in time does the one number outweigh the other? Because I'm sure we could all find ways that it does comply. But I think what you're hearing here is people trying to mention the fact that we just want a conversation. We're not even really going to get a conversation with the county. We're just going to get an opportunity to voice ourselves and then they vote. That's not a conversation. That's just an opportunity to throw a Hail Mary into the end zone in the last seconds in hope that something goes your way. And I don't think that's fair to the community. I'd also like to bring up something that it's been brought up that this project is very safe and secure. It's 24-hour surveillance, people on site, it's fenced in, no people can come visit it, all that kind of stuff. However, what happens during the day when they leave the property and they go out into the community? I think that's what a lot of people talk about when they say safety or their concerns about it. I don't think anyone's worried that they're going to be quiet at night. They have to be quiet at night. I think what we're concerned about is during the day when your children are walking home from school or wanting to go down to these parks or something like that, how does this impact our community? That is an important thing to think about. In the general plan, we talk a lot about buildings and structures, but we're talking about the sense of community and people that live here and have homes here and are raising families here. And I think that's something that you have a responsibility to take into consideration when you think about that this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last speaker is Bob Townsend.
Good evening, gentlemen, and the rest of us in the House. What I am here for, and I won't take 3 minutes, there's 40 Prado Road that the city has all but eminent domained and now is asking for funding to build a homeless, a residence next to the 40 Prado where there's services already. The county has all but eminent domained the Duval property out on Los Osos Valley Road, which is probably way bigger than needed, could be offset back off of Los Osos Valley Road. It is in a closer proximity to 40 Prado Road that has services for the homeless and for the project. And services are there. The county already owns the property. It's out of the way. It could be easily done there. So there's alternatives for the county that they haven't looked into. And that's all I wanted to let you know. 40 Prado, the property next door, and Duval property could be purchased and built upon and worked, and they could spend their $7 million that they have to by the end of June in order to make the project go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, that's the end of our speakers.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody who spoke. I'm going to just take a second and see if anybody wants to add their thoughts. This is the last chance saloon kind of thing. Raise your hand or come forward. Steve already spoke, so I know he's not coming forward. All right, in that case, we'll go ahead and close public comment, and I'm going to bring it back to the commission. So commissioners, any discussion, any additional questions for staff? I know you mentioned you might hold off on additional questions or comments. Now's the time, yeah.
Just a brief, quick one, which I think is probably a technical question. I heard a couple of comments suggesting that we should be having a CEQA analysis. My understanding, and I want to see if I'm correct on this, is that the statement that there is no analysis necessary here because there will be no impact is because the view of staff is that there is no environmental impact of finding conformance or not conformance only. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember. I can help address that. So again, CEQA is a requirement that the body has to comply with when it's making a discretionary action. There is a common sense exception to CEQA for any action that can be seen with certainty that there will be no possibility for that action to have a significant effect on the environment. And since the only action before you today is deciding whether something is in conformance with the general plan or not, that's not going to have an impact on the environment. And so the CEQA, for your purposes, is an exemption. The county will have to do their own CEQA review as lead agency for the project and approval of the project through their own permitting process.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, similar follow-up on legality. The issue of self-permitting was brought up, and it was somewhat questioned that is a thing. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I can. There's a government code section that exempts, it's been interpreted by the Attorney General to exempt cities and counties from the zoning and building requirements of the city or county in which, like if they own a piece of land in that other city or county jurisdiction, they're exempt from complying with the building and zoning standards of that jurisdiction. So in this case, the county owns land within the jurisdiction of the city, and that government provision exempts them from our zoning and building requirements.
Okay, so as far as the lawyers are concerned, that's not an issue here, it's settled.
Correct. The Attorney General's opinion that I'm quoting or citing is from 1962, so it's been settled for a while.
So it sounds like this is aimed at preventing a double permitting process, essentially. Would that be correct? Because the county has jurisdiction over that, we don't need to also permit it. Is that roughly correct?
Yes, and I think that you have two bodies and you don't want to have conflicting authority, and it just makes it simpler that that's the rule.
Okay.
That you don't have to, I mean, it would be the same if the city owned land out in the county outside of its jurisdiction and tried to do a project. So it's kind of a mutual respect.
I see. Great. Thank you. Commissioners, any further questions for staff, or this would be the time for, yes?
I have another question for in zoning table 2.1, there are two things listed there. There's homeless shelter, and then there's supportive and transitional housing. The homeless shelter is blank in the square for R1 and allowed for the zone PF. Supportive and transitional housing, on the other hand, is allowed by right in R1, and it's a minor use permitting situation for the PF zone. Do I have that? Is the definition of those two, is there, can we settle in on that this is one or the other?
Yes, we're considering the Welcome Home Village to be interim, transitional, and supportive housing.
Okay, so it's not a homeless shelter like we have at 40 Prado.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you. Any discussion, or would anybody like to introduce a motion at this time? Commissioner, yes.
This might be for the applicant.
I kept hearing, we all kept hearing that this felt rushed. And so can anyone speak on that as far as the timelines that you've complied with the community, with the city, with the neighborhood? What's the law say?
Certainly, I can start, and please feel free to invite Ms. Belchup if you want any project specifics from the county's perspective. But the grant was awarded last year. The city and county have been collaborating, talking to community members for the initial site, evaluating the grant specifics, the project's specifics. The county has been diligently pursuing other sites that fit the grant parameters. And they've, I know, have done a considerable outreach in the community. I'm sure they can't reach everybody. The communications team has been involved. The communications team has been in touch with the city's communication team, and they've held the community forum, which was very well attended. And so that's what has been done to date. I do know that, in consideration in some of the comments at the community forum, that there will be continuing community engagement throughout the project.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but would you like to speak to the timeline of the project, perhaps? And I think technically we have to reopen public comment for this. Is that correct?
This is just correspondence with the
Oh, okay, so we don't have to?
You're welcome to
Perfect.
ask questions
Would you-
back and forth.
If you would like, I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to put you on the spot if you're not, okay.
Thank you, Linda Belch, County San Luis Obispo. Happy to answer questions on the timeline. The project was awarded the funding in August of 2023. We were originally looking at a property next to the Higuera DSS location that is a vacant lot. Spent several months looking at that location, and ultimately it was not viable because residential locations are not permitted in that particular location. And so the project team had to pivot. We identified this location, the parking, and along with a vacant lot on Sierra Way as alternative locations. First looked at the Sierra Way location because it is vacant. We realized the impact of the parking, which I'm happy to address that should you wish me to do that as well. Spent January, February, and part of March looking at that Sierra Way location to determine viability, but ultimately because of the soil, the grading, the retaining work, project was estimated to go over budget by $3 to $5 million, making that just fiscally not doable. So then in March, we pivoted to look at the Johnson and Bishop locations, which you have before you. And so I definitely understand the community's concern that it does seem rushed to this location, but it is because we've been diligently working on other locations, trying to make sure we land on the right location for this project.
And as far as upcoming timeline, well, obviously we've heard of the May 21st meeting, but beyond that, what does the process look like? And maybe perhaps with specific interest to inputs from the community, perhaps.
Sure. So yes, May 21st, we will be going to the Board of Supervisors requesting approval of the project location. I do want to stress that we're not beginning construction until much later in the year. Those things, we're still working on a number of necessities with the project, making sure that we have all of the construction in place, working out the budget, because we have moved locations, so we recognize that we have to look at that holistically. But just to be completely transparent, if we don't have an approved location, we're kind of wasting everyone's time to continue development of a location that's not going to be viable.
And okay, so in May, and then you'll get approval for the location, and then you would, I said you would have to go back for approval for the design and the project itself at a later date, or?
That would be our intent, yes. So we are going to be asking for location approval and then coming back to the board once we have final development budgets and contracts and all of that in place.
And I'm assuming both of those would allow the community to provide further input, and hopefully in between the two, there's some other opportunities along the way.
Correct. As I think someone mentioned, one of the responses we got at our community forum was a desire to have more avenues for community input, and so we are looking at how to create that. We have a survey that went out to those who registered for the forum, asking what would work best for the community, and so we're looking at those responses so that we can have continued conversation.
Great. I know, Saba, you were anxious to come in, yeah.
Thank you. So on the, one more question, please. On the financial part, so the state awarded the county money in August of '23.
Yes.
And so here we are in May of '24. That is a very quick turnaround to spend that kind of money. Why would the state put that kind of requirement on funding these type of facilities? Can you state? Because I don't know how anybody would put a project together that quickly.
I can tell you what the parameters are. It's in statute that 50% of the funding awarded has to be spent by June of 2024, with the remaining amount obligated and spent by June of 2025. And so all of the jurisdictions who were awarded these encampment resolution funds are in the same predicament we are, trying to make sure we can spend that money and not lose the services for our community.
Yeah. I know the governor is frustrated with all the money they've been spending on homeless services throughout the state and then projects not coming forward. So I'm sure that has something to do with the timeline. But so how will half the money be spent by the June 24 deadline if everything comes together for the county?
Part of our proposal on May 21st is requesting permission to prepay our developer a sum of money that they will hold toward development services. So we're not purchasing the units at this point. As I said, we're still working on development and making sure we choose the right units. But prepaying is an allowable use under the encampment resolution funds and meets that 50% expenditure.
Thank you very much.
And the county process that you described a minute ago, the next steps, this project will not come back before the city at all, is that correct? It's all county process after this?
That is correct.
Okay.
Just quickly, since you mentioned it, did you want to address any of the parking implications?
I can definitely address the parking implications. We have a parking subcommittee that's been working on that. We've actually identified 80 new spaces to replace the 100 that we're estimating will be lost with the project development. And the parking subcommittee will continue to work on that because our commitment is to not have those parking impacts fall to the community.
Where are those 80 spaces?
Some of them have been repurposed within the health agency campus, and we're also going to be getting space from a nearby church. The Renovate Church has offered us 50 spaces for staff to utilize, so we're working on all of those logistics.
Okay, and then the residents of this would not be car owners, is that correct?
We do not believe at this point, because most of these individuals are living in the creek. They would probably be in their car if they had one, and so we do not believe they're going to have vehicles at this point, no.
Or if they did, they'd head for safe parking programs.
Correct.
Which we're also trying to do, so.
Yeah.
Commissioner, you've been waiting patiently.
Okay, so you mentioned that this was modeled after a successful program in Santa Barbara. Is that right? And what was the name of that again?
There's multiple programs actually in Santa Barbara County. There is the Santa Barbara, I think it's on Santa Barbara Street. I don't know the exact location.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, my question is, we had some concerns as far as noise and safety. Are you familiar with those projects at all, that you can kind of speak to any of those subjects of what they experienced? Anything like
I can speak to that, yes. And I don't have our video to show that we shared at our May 1st presentation, but if I did, you would see the mayor of Santa Barbara sharing openly that he was not in support of that project when it was initially proposed. But now that it has been built and has been viable and has been working, he is a full supporter because he sees the benefit to the community and that it's not impacting in a negative manner those around it. I don't want to share on behalf of our city's police force, but I am aware that our at least one member of your city police has contacted the police in Santa Barbara to ask specifically about, are you receiving and seeing an increase in calls around these communities? And he reported back that that is not happening.
Oh, please go ahead.
You know what? I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Great, thank you so much for indulging us. Commissioners, bring it back to the dais. Commissioner Jorgensen, did you have some thoughts?
Well, I'm actually ready to make
Oh, okay.
a motion. But I did want to say first that there's no question that this was a very late announcement. And frankly, to me, it's rude, it's off-putting. No one likes surprises. I live on Lizzie Street, so I'm not very far from this either. And my wife and I, we start thinking about, well, will that mean more people in the creek? Will it mean this? Will it mean that? And it's definitely tough. Listening tonight and reading what we've seen and seeing the role of the county and the state, this is a delicate byplay, but the reality is the city is a very junior partner in this kind of exercise. And the reality, I think, also is that it's likely to move forward in some form or another, and it may be at some point we're going to have to let go of the feeling of being kind of badly surprised by something and figure out how can we make this really good, as maybe only the city of San Luis can do. And to me, that would include finding ways in this process to get to know these residents of this village, for them to get to know us, to find ways that we can volunteer there and they can maybe volunteer in our communities. In a certain way, it isn't really one exact neighborhood that we all feel a part of. There's 4 or 5 different neighborhoods. Maybe the main connection among them is the dog walkers, and that includes us, at least in my family. We get to know a lot of people that way. But the reality, as I look at this, is we've got to pull together and figure out how this thing can concede. They've got a grant, they've got county land, they've got support facilities. There's modest public transit, I guess we could say, and there certainly are some bike paths. There appear to be quite experienced program managers that have succeeded in areas like Isla Vista, which is certainly residential, and folks there that can make service connections. So I'm looking to kind of figure out how we can make this work and do something special in this community. It's going to be a really hard pull, and it's especially hard. I mean, I still feel like it's rude, but I'm going to move that we approve the draft resolution and go ahead and move this forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Actually, I have a question for staff.
Okay.
Is that question time over?
Yeah, if nobody has a second, I mean, we're going to have discussion afterwards, so we're welcome to ask your question now if you're considering your support and this will help you out.
Yeah, it would. So in the presentation, it was mentioned that some of the general plan policies, it's not a perfect fit. So, in the staff report, we got the one policy that was determined to be in conformance, and the public has quite diligently spoke on other policies that they feel are not in conformance, both today and in written correspondence. So I guess my question for staff is what is the criteria that you weighted the policies of the general plan to, decide if it was conforming or non-conforming?
Thank you, Commissioner Tully, for the great question. We have, when the city makes conformity findings, as you well know, this general plan is a very broad blueprint document full of, some competing policies. The commission has ability to weigh and balance those policies in considering conformance. Lots of great policies were brought up by the public. Staff has seen that correspondence and reviewed it. And we still, in balancing all of the policies that support housing for all, in the, specifically the housing element, but also throughout the general plan, we feel we can stand by the recommendation. For example, it was brought up that, there's policies very specific to such services and housing on the Higuera corridor. Of course, that was described, but there's also policies that talk about grouping for convenience such services and facilities, and the County Health Campus is a location for that. So that's an example of weighing those types of policies.
Did you have additional questions, comments?
No.
No? You have a question, or?
I've some things I'd like to say.
Okay.
Do you want to shoot for a second?
Yeah, I think that would be better if we can maybe hold it. I mean, we'll definitely get discussion, but maybe we wait until we get a second. Yeah, of course, before a vote, of course, yes. All right, so we still have a motion on the floor, but we have no second.
I will second the motion on the floor.
Okay.
And I will have some comments too, but
Yeah, I think it's only fair that maybe we go around and everybody can express their comments before we do a roll call vote. Yeah? Commissioner Howard, please.
Okay. This is a tough one, and I have many thoughts about this. And by the way, just remember, we are part of you. We're volunteers up here, and we're trying to make the best decisions that we can, and our responsibility really is to the entire city and to the general plan. And I recognize that it's not clear cut. There's elements in favor, there's elements that are not so in favor. Our situation is difficult because it's a county project. The county owns the land, they're driving the process, they are the prime mover here. And I also am unhappy with the timing of this and the fact that it was thrust upon us. I learned about this, our packet came out last week. That's the first I heard of it. And so I share those feelings with you, and this process is not optimal by any means. And I feel strongly that we should have the opportunity for engagement and so on. I've read all the letters, all the ones that came in before I had to go teach at Cal Poly today anyway. And I could summarize the issues there: lack of notice and the fast timeline, conformance with the general plan. You've made excellent points there, for and against with the land use and the housing elements. Keep everything down at Prado. Are there going to be follow-up services? Where's the funding for this? And then in the public comments tonight, I've heard additional comments. There's concern about assuring that this is truly transitional and supportive in nature, and that the 90 days helps with that, and knowing something about that. The CEQA, I think, has been dealt with. That was brought up in a number of the letters as well. One of the questions for me was, can we spend the money in time? I'm a little wary of, we're going to prepay for this thing and just give them $7 million and cross our fingers. I assume that's going to be a bonded situation for performance and so on. Or maybe I guess that's not really in our purview tonight anyway. So the parking issue is something that also came up, and so I'm glad to hear that there's a plan for that at least. The legality of self-permitting. So those are my summary of the issues that this thing raises, right? I want to emphasize a few things, though. There is a cost to not doing this as well, and there's a cost to doing nothing. And I feel that we need an all-of-the-above kind of approach to this issue. And over the last year and a half that I've been sitting on this commission, we have heard a number of proposals that have come forward, mostly about the safe parking program. We are 0 for 3 in those. That's come up for 3 different neighborhoods. And each time we've filled the room with folks that have the same kind of concerns that you do. And so our batting average is really poor right now on doing something and moving forward. So, and as somebody mentioned who lives nearby, I think it was you, sir, there's homeless people around in our neighborhoods without this kind of a thing. I live in a different part of town. I live over in Anholm, and it's an issue for me. It's kind of throughout the community. And we, you know, so many of the letters say we support the idea of helping the homeless, just not here, not near me. And after the safe parking issues that we've been through, I'm a little weary of that. And I put myself in your shoes too. What if this was down the street or around the corner from me? And then I can remember, well, it sort of is already, because I live near Stanner Creek, and there's homeless people that come through there quite often. And so, and I've also gotten the opportunity to see what our homeless response really is all about. I've been down to 40 Prado. I spent the night there, in fact. And I am so impressed with the level of services and the commitment of the employees that are doing that work. And we are really doing everything we can. And when something like this comes along, this isn't really our program, it's the county's, and so we're sort of a bystander on it. But my basic posture then is that we need to support this. And so there's a lot of specifics about your neighborhood that I appreciate. I've spent time up there too. I have friends that live in that area. There's a couple of other things to remember. This is a phased situation, and it's also temporary in that these are temporary structures. I think that there's a possibility that if this goes in and it is horrible, then something can be done. I don't know what that path looks like, but so there's that. And also somebody wondered about the pressure that we have received from the County Board of Supervisors. There's been none. I've had no communication with the county whatsoever, and none of them contacted me like, oh, we need you to pass this. There's nothing like that happening here. And then, has anybody of you?
Sorry, I was just making it that they don't really need us to pass this to move forward anyway, right? They just have to report back.
Well, yeah, right. It sounds like we have a very small tool in assembling this thing, and I don't know if it matters that much at all. The main meeting is really to voice a lot of these concerns is the 21st, assuming whatever happens tonight. And then the last thing I want to say is just this assumption of negativity associated with this. And the time that I did spend down at 40 Prado, I got to meet a lot of these people. And they are generally good people that are just in a hard spot and have been going through a lot. And there was the woman who spoke about High Street and being a neighbor to this. It's easy to assume that it's just going to be drug needles and feces everywhere. And 40 Prado is rough around the edges. I'll give you that. And it is really hard to. This situation is a little bit different. It's actual housing units. This is where you graduate to after not having a home at all. So, and following up on what you said, Commissioner Jorgensen, I think that we need to find a way to turn this into a positive thing. And there's a lot of positivity that is available. And having met some of these folks and talked to them and finding out more about their stories and what they're all about. So, not easy. I have to admit, I still don't really know what I want to do about this, but that's what I wanted to say to you, and I wanted to make sure that you felt heard. And so thank you for all that.
Commissioner Khan, do you want to share any thoughts before the vote?
This is a very difficult decision to make and something brought before us. I feel it's unfortunate with the timing, the state giving a short fuse like that to the county. It doesn't seem very fair. I've built many projects in my career, and to do a project and get half the money spent in a year when you just dreamed it up is almost impossible. So I do look at the question at hand. Well, let me start over. I do have a soft spot for the homeless, and I do want a solution, and I think that this project can work. I don't necessarily think that this site is the right site, but I think that needs to be handled, and I like the concept of what's going on. I was working for the city of Grover Beach when they're building one of these facilities, and it's working fairly well in the city of Grover Beach. But I'm going to go back to, what was the question? The question was, is it in conformance with the general plan? So I looked at the general plan in preparation for this meeting and came upon the same sections that some of the audience brought up about compatibility with the neighborhoods. And so I'm in questioning in my mind that is it really in conformance with the general plan? And so just trying to answer that question, I don't think it is. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Tully, or, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Can staff just quickly confirm or deny that this project site is within the general hospital site special focus area?
It is not. It's across the street from the Special Focus Area 5 identified in the general plan.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Vice Chair, oh, actually, Commissioner Jordan, I mean, you introduced the motion and had some comments, but did you have additional thoughts you wanted to share before vote? Okay, Vice Chair?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo some of the comments I heard from fellow commissioners here. I agree on the process. This is nowhere near ideal. And I agree with the neighbors who feel aggrieved by that process and feel a lack of notice. But I also, unfortunately, don't find those objections to be relevant to the question of whether or not it is in conformance with the general plan. I also feel the urgency you spoke of for us to do something about this issue, and I'm also well aware of that 0 for 3 batting average you referred to. There isn't going to be a perfect site. There are always going to be objections, but I think that the proximity to the services, I think that the opportunity to use the funding that we have now weigh in favor of us approving this and finding it, sorry, not approving the project, but finding it to be in conformance with the general plan. And I will be voting yes on this.
Thank you. Perhaps I can offer some thoughts and then we'll get to that vote. Since we received the packet, I've also been doing a lot of thinking, and particularly around this site, because about 9 years ago, I worked for the county for a few years. I no longer do, but I did. And I worked for the health agency, which was in that hospital. And on my orientation day, I remember speaking to the health agency director who told me he had been delivered as a baby in that hospital, when it was a hospital before it turned into the health agency. So when we got this packet, I started wondering, well, it's a chicken and the egg kind of question for me, right? Did the neighborhood catch up to the hospital and the public facilities, or did the public facilities catch up to the neighborhood? And if so, is there does something take precedent over the other, right? So I wouldn't say I'm near this proposed site. I'm over in a new neighborhood, in the Regated neighborhood, but you know, they have an affordable housing project coming in there. We have some new residents along the train tracks that have joined us in our neighborhood. So we're definitely not immune to the issue of underhoused and unhoused residents of our community. A couple months ago, you may have read, there's a creek through our neighborhood. They found a body there. So I'm by no means sitting here and saying you can all feel optimistic about a project like this coming into your neighborhood, because there's some very real concerns that come with it. And along with the rest of the dais, I too agree that it feels very, very rushed for you all as the immediate neighborhood. And although there are other opportunities coming up for input, I recognize that they're not proactive opportunities, or as proactive as perhaps they should have been for you all. And with that, I can completely agree with you all on that. Some of the text that we read here about general plan conformity talks about the safety, right, of the residents. And to me, that includes the unhoused residents. People that are living, unfortunately, in the creek or in their vehicle, which I think one of the last few meetings we heard, I think it was 197 people are sleeping in their cars roughly in San Luis Obispo every night. We have 12 parking spots in the Safe Parking program right now. Those other 185 are still out there. The people in their creek are going to continue to be there. What about their safety? If we don't do something Are we protecting their safety? So that's, when I think of the general plan, I think of the entire city, not just the neighborhood, because in a democratic process, the entire city has a voice of what happens within the city limits, right? And I think we have a duty to protect the interests of all residents, including those who are unfortunately not able to either afford a house or be able to get in some sort of program and really need a hand up. Like Commissioner Houghton said, I think there's a tendency to criminalize and pathologize homelessness that is not always true when you actually engage with this community and with some of the services that are included and offered to them. So my hope moving forward, knowing that we're kind of, I feel like we're like the representatives for DC, right? Like we kind of have a voice, but like nothing we say tonight is going to really matter, right? So that's my personal feeling. My hope is that we all get proven wrong in the long haul, or that you have plenty of opportunity to have your input in the process to either make it be something that you can all agree with, or change it, or pause it, or do something with it. But I hope that you'll have those opportunities at a better setting, because I don't think tonight we're going to be able to offer you the closure that perhaps you're looking for, because we don't have that power tonight. But I do feel, like Vice Chair said, that we don't have sufficient evidence to say we cannot make this finding. So with that in mind, I'll end my comments. Yes.
Oh, I was just going to say before the vote, it might be helpful for staff to pull up the slide earlier about how policies are weighted in the general plan during staff review.
Thank you. Yes.
Just for the commission and public to see that again. And then also putting it in the context of the city's priorities, the city's housing and homelessness major city goal, which has been a major city goal for over a decade now. And so there's additional weight that gets applied to policies that are furthering those goals and those priorities of the city council.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that would be a good idea, I think. I guess we can wait for that, and then if nobody else has any final comments, we can, yes, Commissioner Howard?
Just to respond to, there was a comment near the end about there's other sites, expanding 40 Prado, Duval Ranch, and these other, and to me that falls into we need all of the above. And it's not just going to be here, it's going to be distributed.
Yep. And it's also, they're not sites that are in front of us today for consideration, so.
Right.
Yeah. I will just give it a second for that slide. Right.
Yes, and as Mr. Corey indicated, the cities can determine consistency of a project with the general plan based upon if it furthers overall policies of the general plan and does not obstruct their attainment, recognizing that a proposed project may be consistent with overall objectives of the general plan, but not with each and every policy thereof. In all instances, the city may use its discretion to balance and harmonize policies with other countervailing policies in a manner that best achieves the city's overall goals. And I will note that one of the major city goals of the city concerns housing and homelessness. This use and this type of project is embedded in the city's homelessness strategic plan.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the suggestion as well. I'm looking around, I don't see anybody. Oh, yes.
I want to make one more comment, kind of, again, looking ahead, but looking at that May 21st meeting, and it comes from the experience we have as planning commissioners, the resolutions to approve a project or to recommend approval to the city council, depending on the size and scale and how it fits, almost always include findings and then conditions of approval. And conditions of approval can be a very wide kind of thing, and it seems like it's worth starting to think about paying attention to that aspect, because what kind of reports are going to be made? How are they going to be distributed? Will the neighborhood hear about this? If there are safety or noise violations, how will the community be informed? There's a lot of things that could be written into the requirements for the project that could start to bring the neighbors together and ideally bring together neighbors and the residents of this village as well. And I think that's well worth thinking about, because to make, if there is to be a project, to make it as good as it possibly can and as responsive, especially given the lack of notice and everything else, that might be really worth thinking about.
Great. Thank you very much. I think, oh, yep.
I would just like to take one more statement. This past information that just came before us about the general plan conformity and about how it doesn't have to be strict conformance. I'm probably going to vote yes for the proposal or for the amendment, excuse me, for the motion based on this, because I didn't realize that it didn't have to conform with all of them. And I do know that the homelessness is one of the top priorities for the city of San Luis Obispo as far as its four major goals. So that's all I have to say.
And just one quick thing, as far as the notice goes, I did ask staff earlier if we've conformed with the legal requirements, and it seems that there's no lack of clarity that we have. So we have.
Yes.
And one last comment from me. So I've been torn up until a minute and a half ago, but I think really what is driving it home for me as a urban planner myself is that this use is permissible in these zone districts. If I got that correct, right? The one zone district needs a minor use permit, but they're not prohibited. It's not prohibited here, and I think that's what I'm going to hang my hat on. So that's all.
I think with that, we better do a roll call vote before we get more thoughts.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Jorgensen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cooley,
Yes.
Commissioner Houghton,
Yes.
Commissioner Khan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolly,
Yes.
Chair Munoz Morris,
Yes.
and that motion passes.
Great.
And
Thank you
Chair,
very
if you'd
much.
like to take a break while the room clears.
I would suggest we take a 5-minute recess. All right, let's go ahead and resume the meeting. And we have to go back to item 3, which is an election of a new chair and vice chair for the Planning Commission. So as required by the bylaws of the Planning Commission, we hold an election every year for a 1-year term. So it looks, I believe traditionally we open it up for nominations. So anybody is welcome at this time to bring forward a nomination for themselves or someone else.
Chair, if I can just add, while you are considering your nominations, that under the bylaws, a chair or vice chair cannot serve for more than 2 consecutive terms. So me parachuting in here tonight, I'm not sure who might violate that if they were nominated, but just wanted to note it for you all.
Okay. Thank you. Well, you are deflating a little bit my delusions of grandeur here, but no, I don't think anybody would be embellished. Yeah.
Super glue on that.
Yeah, right? I'm taking it home tonight when you're not looking. Commissioners, any nominations?
I have one.
Yes, please.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Cooley for chair of the board for next year as the vice chair now. And that's a logical thing. And I think this also for the vice chair, I think the same thing holds. We've definitely followed the seniority approach to this, and I think it's actually a very good one, partly because it's knowable and it's transparent, but also it just turns out that to get everybody to chair, as many people as possible can chair within a period, it's a different experience. You have a different perspective, you gain something from it. And I was saying to somebody tonight, I'm sure if people, when they were interviewed for the Planning Commission, were told, you know, you're likely to be a chair, a lot of people might have walked out of the room because it's intimidating. There's a whole bunch of ways that it is, you know, and in some ways also you have to kind of learn other ways to get your voice out because you're not in the position to kind of just advocate for things all the way along. You've got to kind of build a consensus and bring the audience around, which is something that was done really well today, I think, by the way. bikeplay. So that's my nomination.
Thank you very much. And as required, and I do agree, I think using a seniority kind of system and encouraging everybody to have an opportunity is a great way to go. We have a motion, I guess, to nominate Vice Chair Cooley. I do need a second so that we can vote on this. Would anybody like to second?
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for the nomination of Commissioner Cooley as the new chair. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, I believe that is a unanimous election. Before we move on to the celebration and confetti and the speeches, we do also have to elect a vice chair. So I bring the same question to you all, to the floor,
I'm
Commissioner.
ready to do it.
Let's do
The
it.
thing is I've served on planning commissions in 3 cities, and I've done it here, and I'm definitely not going to do it again. So I feel like I'm a
Get it
neutral
all in,
party
yeah.
in a sense. I'm not advocating in anything, but I'd like to nominate for vice chair Commissioner Houghton, who definitely deserves it and ready to roll. And I think it's going to be really fun because in another year, that would be the logical succession as well. But that way we've got coverage and we've got good people who know how this all works and are very articulate. So I nominate Commissioner Houghton
Yeah.
for vice chair.
We have a motion.
And I would like to second that nomination.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Before we vote, I do want to ask one question of Commissioner Khan, because I remember when I was elected chair, it was technically your turn and you chose to pass. So I don't think you've had your chance as chair or vice. So was that a conscious choice? If not, I would be happy to also include you as consideration for vice chair, because I think that you deserve the opportunity just like anybody else.
Thank you. I appreciate you being considerate. Bob and I talked about it today, and I'm happy with the way things went right now.
Excellent. Well, wonderful. And then in that case, I think we're all in agreement. So we have a motion and a second to nominate Commissioner Cooley as vice chair. So all in favor? Oh, excuse me, Commissioner Howden. We already got you. Yeah, we already got you. You don't want a chair and vice chair? Sorry. So that again is nomination to for vice chair for Commissioner Howden. So all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And I believe that is also a unanimous vote. So congratulations, both on your nomination. I would just like to say very briefly, it's been wonderful steering the ship for this past year, and I wish you all smooth sailing, just like I had. So thank
I
you.
just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for your leadership over the past year. I think
Thank you.
you led the meetings with incredible patience and compassion and a lot of thoughtfulness. Tonight was an excellent example of that, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm going to turn into a menace now. Shall we?
The way you pose questions brings the audience along and creates a much smarter audience by the end in terms of how this works and what's important and what they need to know. And it's a public service you've been doing, seriously.
Well, thank you. That was very kind of you. Appreciate that.
I'll pile on too. You've had a nice soft touch with these issues, and yeah, it's been just right.
Great. Thank you so much.
Nice job.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Stop it now. You're going to make me blush. All right. Technically, I'm happy to give up the seat and you can conclude the meeting. I think we have a couple more items. Sure. Very quickly. Great. Let's take a quick moment and I'll move out of the way.
All right, we are back, and I guess it's time for an update from Deputy Community Corey.
Well, thank you, Chair Cooley, members of the commission. I have a brief update just on the forecast. Looking out on the calendar, the May 22nd meeting, no items, so that's likely to be canceled. But looking out in June, we do have items for both the meeting of June 2nd and June 26th. Right now, June 2nd, we're looking at a use permit for a fraternity proposed at 1264 Foothill. So that'll be coming before you from staff. And then we also have a text amendment of the zoning regulations, which is going to look at amending our code to allow single family and multifamily residential in the neighborhood commercial zone. It used to be that way before we updated our code in 2017. And we've done some research, and it's not ultra clear how it got dropped off, but we're bringing that back for consideration to allow that to occur, to give those smaller usually they're smaller lots that have kind of limited flexibility with parking and uses, and so this just provides an opportunity to potentially have single-family or multifamily, which a lot of these sites have single-family already, and being able them to convert back and forth without being stuck in our non-conforming use regulation scenarios. Looking out on 626.
You said the 2nd, and the 2nd is a Saturday. I think you meant the 12th of June.
You know what? My slash. Look, I think
Okay.
Yes, you are correct. I think the 6/12. Exactly. Okay, 6/26. We do have a couple items. One of them is a design review of a large 22,000 square foot commercial building. It's out at 10 Higuera, which is the site of the Central Coast Brewery and Crowbar Distillery. So it's a new building in the back of that site. And that's coming before you with a recommendation from the Architecture Review Commission. We also have an appeal that will be before you. This is 1137 Peach, and this was a appeal of a decision by the director to deny a homestay permit. A homestay permit?
Homestay.
Which is like where you're able to Airbnb a bedroom or several bedrooms in your home. Yeah, short-term rental. So that concludes the update.
And I'm sorry, could you just confirm a number of dates we're just passed by? The script I have here says the next meeting is May 22nd, but.
May 22nd would be the next regularly scheduled meeting, but currently we have no items.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Probably be canceled.
Yeah,
Right.
June 12th.
All right, then I will say that the next regularly scheduled meeting is scheduled for May 22nd, although we're being told it's likely to be canceled. And the next likely meeting is June 12th in the council chambers at City Hall, 990 Palm Street, San Luis Obispo. And with that, we are adjourned.
I'm glad you